and avoid them in the future. But it was an accident that he chose Berkshire Hathaway. If the chairman hadn't tried to cheat him out of an eighth, there wouldn't have been any Buffett-Berkshire Hathaway history.
If you're emotional about investment, you're not going to do well. You may have all these feelings about the stock has no feelings about you. Looking back, it's interesting, that tender offer, I didn't realize it, but it happened about 5 days after my dad had died, and whether that had affected me or not, I don't know.
Do you remember your last conversation with your father?
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about it.
I think it just sobered him and hurt him. But Warren soldiers on. Both Warren and I could look at our fathers and see what they did right and what they did wrong. Warren's father was a real old-fashioned right-wing ideologue. And his father was so intense about it that Warren just decided that it was a mistake. It cabbaged up your head to be that much of an ideologue. So he loved his father, but he didn't want to become that much of a true believer in anything.
My politics became more overt after my dad died. Civil rights changed my views. You know, in 1776, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "All men are created equal," and then when they wrote the Constitution, they all of a sudden decided that, no, it was just 3/5 of a person if you were black. I mean, that struck me as kind of crazy.
I was talking to him one day about some racial issue, and he said to me, "Wait till women discover they're the slaves of the world." Now, how many men were cognizant of that, and even women then?
The initial example is really my mother. She came from a generation where the main function of the wife was to help her husband in the job. And my sisters are fully as smart as I am. They got better personalities than I have, but they got the message a million different ways that their future was limited, and I got the message that the sky is the limit. And it wasn't due to a lack of love or anything of the sort. It was the culture. On the other hand, you can look at the flip side of that and say it's quite encouraging, because if you look at what this country accomplished only using half of its talent, you know, just think of the potential for the future. I'm enormously bullish on America over the future, and part of the reason is that we, by some rather stupid decisions, essentially put half our talent on the sidelines.
Warren is probably the most rational person I've ever met. Charlie Munger would be a close rival. And Charlie became a man that Warren depended on heavily. And I think his first experiences in the discarded cigar butt era convinced him that it was not exactly where he wanted to be.
He'd made so much money for so long doing what he'd been taught by Ben Graham, which is to buy these very cheap stocks. And if they were cheap enough, he didn't care if it was a lousy company and a lousy management. He knew he was going to make money anyway just because of the cheapness.
Charlie Munger has had a big impact on me in moving me toward looking for wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices. And that was enormously important because it enabled Berkshire to scale up in a way that would have been impossible to do otherwise. Yep.
What are the key indicators you look for within companies before making an investment?
Well, I look for something that does give them a moat around it. We have a company called See's Candy out on the West Coast. See's Candy is boxed chocolates. If you give a box of See's chocolates to your girlfriend on the first date and she kisses you, we own you. You know, I mean, we can raise the price tomorrow and you'll buy the same box. You're not going to fool around with success. So the key there is the response. You do not want to go home on Valentine's Day and say to your wife or your sweetheart, preferably they're the same person, you don't say, "Here, honey, I took the low bid." It doesn't work. Price is, to a degree, is immaterial. If you've got an economic castle People are going to come and want to take that castle away from you. And you better have a strong moat. You better have a knight in the castle that knows what he's doing.
You're not buying an asset. You're buying a name. You're buying a brand. You're buying a real franchise here. And Charlie was more responsible for that than anybody.
We were mental partners right from the moment we met.
I want to know, going back 50 years, what it was like when you first met Warren.
Well, I thought he was a prodigy. And I got a lot of criticism. My wife said, "Why are you paying such enormous respect to that young man with a crew cut who won't eat vegetables?"
He's ungodly smart. He's got a much broader intellect than I do. And he's magnificent at being able to condense important ideas into just a very few words.
If you're not interested in the economic scene right now, you're mentally dead.
Charlie has no tact.
All right, let's talk a little bit about bankers. Charlie on Friday compared them to heroin addicts.
Yeah, well, that's colorful, Charlie, but I would not have chosen that.
I once wrote of him that when they handed out humility, he didn't get his fair share.
The ideal way to run a headquarters is to have one man, preferably over 80, sitting in an office by himself. Anything else is pure frippery.
He's always honest in what he tells me, so I listen to him.
We never had an argument. We just kind of roll with it easily. Suppose Warren doesn't want to do something that I would have done. And suppose that happens 4 times over 40 years or something. What the hell difference does it make to me? Net, the record is working out fine. Both of us know that we've done better by having ethics. Warren's not interested in making money by cheating people.
Warren's opinions of Wall Street investment bankers would not endear him to their mothers. He feels that they're, for the most part, not out for their clients. They're out for their own business interests.
In the late 1960s, there were just a flood of accounting shenanigans and mergers built upon false accounting and misleading people. It was a time when a lot of charlatans were prevailing in Wall Street and were being applauded by Wall Street. And I understood what the game was about, but I didn't want to play in it. So I closed down the partnership at the end of 1969, and I took on the title of chairman for Berkshire Hathaway.
Well, I think the modern Berkshire is pretty much all a reflection of Warren.
I have constructed a business that fits me. It's kind of crazy to spend your life painting if you're painting a subject you don't want to look at. I've gotten to paint my own painting in business on an unlimited canvas, in a way. It's a different sort of place. I work with a great group of people that make my life very easy and that take good care of me. We have 25 people in the office, and if you go back, it's the exact same 25, the exact same ones. We don't have any committees at Berkshire. We don't have a public relations department. We don't have investor relations. We don't have a general counsel. We don't have a human relations department. We just don't go for anything that people do just as a matter of form. It's exactly the life I like. And it's not work to me. It's just a form of play, basically. Well, I like things quiet. I shut the door, actually, at the office because I don't want to hear anybody talking outside. And I still probably spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading.
Look at what's trending today. Our quick roundup of what has you talking.
Well, what's amazing is the stuff he remembers. It's like a little computer, you know. I keep thinking the hard drive will run out of space, but it doesn't.
He's one of the smartest people we know. So I was at a couple of the family dinners at the Gates house where Mary, Bill's mom, was trying to convince him to come out to the family place at Hood Canal to meet Warren Buffett. And he was resisting because he was really busy with Microsoft. And finally he said, Mom, okay, I'll come for lunch.
So the two of us flew out there somewhat reluctantly because, you know, buying and selling stocks, which is how I thought of Warren, wasn't a particular interest to me and didn't seem like value added. It turned out that was completely wrong. We knew that day that we'd be very close friends. In fact, we just couldn't get enough of each other.
Shortly after I met Bill Gates, Bill's dad asked each of us to write down on a piece of paper one word that would best describe what had helped us the most. Bill and I, without any collaboration at all, each wrote the word focus. Well, focus has always been a strong part of my personality. If I get interested in something, I get really interested. If I get interested in a new subject, I want to read about it, I want to talk about it, and I want to meet people that are involved in it.
We both love to work hard. You know, neither of us like frivolous things. You know, he doesn't know much about cooking or art or a huge range of things.
I can't tell you the color of the walls in my bedroom or my living room. I don't have a mind that relates to the physical universe well.
Warren checking the Dow.
But the business universe, I think I understand reasonably well.
Warren's ability to size up people and businesses, it's a pretty magical thing.
He is the best at that of anybody we know.
We should all try to be 20% as good at that.
I like to sit and think. And I spent a lot of time doing that. And sometimes it's pretty unproductive, but I find it enjoyable to think about, particularly about business or investment problems. They're easy. It's the human problems that are the tough ones. Sometimes there aren't any good answers with human problems. There's almost always a good answer with money.
He was sort of a genius. I think sometimes geniuses are by default lonely and isolated. He was not really well adjusted. He was just this funny, humorous guy who maybe had a moat around him because he was afraid and he didn't know anyone that he wanted to let in. And to this day, I don't know, well, nobody knows him like I do, and probably any wife would say that. But,
he's a loner in a sense. And it's difficult to connect on an emotional level because I think that that's not his basic mode of operation.
He was there, physically, but he was upstairs reading all the time. I always told my mother we have to talk in sound bites. I learned that early on, that if you start, going into some long thing, unless you've explained to him ahead of time that it's going to be a long thing and you need him to hang in there, you lose him. You lose him to whatever giant thought he has in his head at the time that he was probably thinking about before you came in and really wants to get back to.
He's not like the rest of us. I don't think my dad ever took anybody for granted, but you are a little bit blind, I think, sometimes to what other people might be doing behind the scenes. And my dad's gotten a little bit of a pass.
Warren can't find the light switch, and it's probably my fault. One time, years ago, when the kids were little, I was feeling really sick. I had the flu, so I lay down on the bed, and I said to Warren, will you get me a pan or something from the kitchen? I may not get to the bathroom. I feel so sick. He said, okay. So he trotted down to the kitchen, and I hear this bang, dip, boom, bang. And he comes up, and he brings me a colander, and I looked at it, and I said, look, honey, this has holes in it. Oh, okay. So he ran down, all this banging with him. He comes up and he puts the colander on a cookie sheet. Physical proximity to Warren doesn't always mean that he's there with you. He's so cerebral, you see. And that's why I learned to have my own life. We were two parallel lines, but very connected when he was open to connecting.
I did make a joke at one point. I said, we could make a tape of Mom yelling, bye, Warren, I'll be back later, and then have the door slam, and you would just think she was here. I don't think he knew what she was doing most of the time. Once Howie and I were both gone, as we've gotten older, she started to see the writing on the wall here and, just started trying to figure out how she could at least have some more, she called it, a room of her own.
The worst mistakes involve not understanding other people as well as you might. Well, she left Omaha in 1977, and there really isn't much to say about that.
It was devastating for him. And I came home because I can't say I was mad at her exactly, but I kept thinking, how can you leave him? He can't function by himself. So my mother, she'd asked a bunch of her friends to sort of look in on him. And Ostrid was one of them.
So I called Ostrid. I said, Ostrid, will you take one, make him some soup, go over there and look after him because he's not going to make it. And it took him a while to figure it out, but he figured it out. I said, I'm not leaving you because I'll be wherever you want me when you want me.
My mom moved to San Francisco, and I think one of the reasons it was important for her to leave Omaha was because she just felt like she was kind of trapped in this environment, that everybody knew who she was, that she, couldn't have her own identity.
He knew that there was something she needed to do, and that she really recognized that the money gave us all